microphony.
And a phony at the mic.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The Doctor of Discernment is now online.
You know, much like my show, in that it's a local reaction to things that are happening on a federal level.
Dispensing a daily dose of common sense. No prescription required.
Wow, do I have a boatload of stuff for you, from the crazy to the absurd. Let's start getting into it because, I mean, it is bizarro world out there. And I say, if it's obvious to me, should be obvious to everybody. Oh, wow. Who could have seen this coming?
This is the Fourth Hour with Greg Belfrage.
Hold on to your butts.
Broadcasting from the basement bunker beneath Teleradio. Welcome to the Fourth Hour of the Greg Belfrage Show. It is really great to have you along. Hope you had a great weekend. Back at it this morning, and I wish we could take a break from the craziness that's out there. It's like, well, it's back to bizarro world again. Another month. Just absolutely crazy. The president is sending Tom Homan to Minnesota. That's the big story this morning. So Tom Homan is going to Minnesota. Let's see if there are additional details here. Trump said on True Social, Tom has not been involved in that area, but he knows and likes many of the people there. Tom is tough but fair and will report directly to me. So there's been a lot of tension, obviously, going on there in Minnesota. Todd Lyons, who is the director of ICE, have pressed for the administration to put more of an emphasis on detaining illegals with final deportation orders and a criminal history. So there's some disagreements as to, in other words, who we should be deporting. So those with final orders, should we be concentrating on those with final deportation orders, or should it be broader than that? So you had the death of Alex Preddy over the weekend. He was killed on Saturday, which just really is incredibly unfortunate. And I honestly, I think we're just going to have to wait and see what happened. The president's made it very clear that investigation will occur, and that will occur. The federal government is involved in an investigation. And I shared some thoughts with you in the last hour of the program this morning. We talked Jonathan Turley, who is a constitutional scholar at George Washington University, and his thoughts on it in reacting to what Democrats are doing and saying. And he's astounded and deeply troubled by it. So this is not just the conservative right that is very, very concerned about what we see transpiring in Minneapolis. I think it's anybody who is committed to the rule of law and order is very, very, very concerned. So Trump said there is an ongoing investigation. He said separately, a major investigation is going on with respect to the massive $20 billion plus welfare fraud that has taken place in Minnesota. And he is at least partially responsible for the violent organized protests going on in the streets. So those were the president's comments on True Social earlier today. So Tom Homan now will be going to Minnesota. As we talked about this morning on the air, you got Senate Republicans now who are divided over, what should be done. Is it time to, pull back and to let things simmer down? I just don't think, seriously, when the fire is burning, you don't wait for the flame, wait for the flames to continue to grow. Let's just let this fire is just going to burn itself out. I don't think it will. I really am not of that mind, just based on I've been observing events and observing the news for a long time. And I really don't think that left to its own devices, what we are seeing in Minnesota is just suddenly going to, oh, it'll die down. There's absolutely no evidence of that. It has gotten worse and worse now with another person dead. But despite that, you've got Republicans who they want to fold. Senator Bill Cassidy called it incredibly disturbing. I agree with that. It is incredibly disturbing to many of us. But the behavior of these people in Minneapolis, even prior to these shootings, was disturbing to many of us. But nothing gets said about that. So Cassidy wants a full joint federal and state investigation. He said the credibility of ICE and DHS are at stake. There must be a full joint federal and state investigation. I disagree with that. We can trust the American people with the truth. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska said the shooting raises serious questions within the administration about the adequacy of immigration enforcement training and the instructions officers are given. And this is what happens. I mean, when you allow things to become this bad, when you allow things to become as bad as they have become, they are not easily changed. The force then that's required to implement these changes is admittedly dramatic. Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina wants a thorough investigation into the shooting, he said, which is the basic standard that law enforcement and the American people expect. So what do you feel about Congress being involved with this? Obviously, there's got to be investigation into what transpired. I'm really not excited about members of Congress being involved in any way whatsoever. I really am not. Everything else they have touched, it just becomes a absolute train wreck. So, does there need to be an investigation? Yes, we've got to look into this. We've got to move forward. Are the politicians the ones who are going to get us there? I don't think so. I really don't believe it. So Kristi Noem said that Preddy had brandished a gun at federal officers, but the video footage didn't show that. He was holding his smartphone. So he was holding up a smartphone as he was approaching officers. He was recording them. He did not appear to draw his handgun. Murkowski wants an independent investigation of the shooting, urged Congress to hold hearings to conduct oversight of ICE. Yeah, that's going to make things a lot better. And this just goes on. This story is from the Hill, but Senator Collins saying this needs to be thoroughly and transparently investigated to determine whether or not excessive force was used. I think we're going to discover that. I think we let authorities handle their investigations and bring in the FBI, bring in skilled investigators, take a look at what happened, what transpired. But you bring politics into this, and that's what you're going to get. Be more politics. So Democrats now will not allow any funding for the Department of Homeland Security to move forward. And that takes us then to a, hold on a second. Here we go. Calls to nuke the filibuster. Get a load of this. It's a story at American Greatness this morning. And I'll just read a portion of this for you. Senate Majority Leader John Thune facing increasing pressure to do away with the filibuster if Democrats seek to force a government shutdown over funding for the Department of Homeland Security. So that's what the Democrats have in mind. They want to force a shutdown over funding for DHS. And Democrats are all on board with this. And so there are increasing number of calls on Thune then to nuke the filibuster, keep the government open. And there are other thoughts that are out there as well. And you may have seen this on X. If Senate Democrats shut down the government, Representative Anna Paulina Luna and a block of Republicans will force them to pass the SAVE Act just to reopen it. The SAVE Act, the Save American Voter Eligibility. Remember, I talked about it particularly last week. I talked about it several times during the fourth hour last week, the SAVE Act. So if Senate Democrats shut down the government, she is saying pass the SAVE Act, and then they'll have to pass that in order to reopen the federal government. And I love this. Luna explained that by tying the SAVE Act to any rules package that would prevent the Senate from stripping the SAVE Act, it would force them. If they choose to shut down the government, when they choose to reopen it, then they will have to choose to simultaneously vote on the SAVE Act. So I love this. This is the SAVE Act that takes aim at voter fraud. And, you know, it would require proof of citizenship then in order to be able to vote in federal elections. So if they tie that then to, if we wind up shutting down the government and go through all of this again, tying the SAVE Act into that, I think, is just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Interesting piece at the New York Post this morning. Bill Maher. And he, hold on, I want to come back to that. More on Bill Maher in a moment. Well, we're talking about the border, and we're talking about ICE and what we saw happen again over the weekend in Minneapolis. Fox News has a piece with and actually it was during Sunday Night in America with Trey Gowdy. And it's a former agent for ICE. And he told Trey Gowdy that refusing to cooperate with ICE, as we're seeing in Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, the city of Minneapolis, refusing to cooperate with ICE. This former ICE agent, Tim Miller is his name. He says this is a formula for disaster. And he said the scary part is that the police aren't with them. Without the police involved locally, it's a formula for disaster. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing play out. And he said, talking about local then law enforcement standing there in partnership with federal law enforcement and them working together, and that it's important. And as far as this shooting over the weekend, he said, you know, you take a look at the law, what laws were broken, then you look at the facts, what are the facts, and you analyze all that, and then there's reasonable force, and then when is a gunplay involved? And he says, whenever guns are involved. So in other words, you had Alex Preddy and with a gun, and suddenly then deadly force becomes an option. And he says it has to be an option. When a gun is sighted, and, you know, if somebody's yelling gun, or we just don't know. But he says we've learned in very painful ways, including with the Renee Good shooting, The people who spout off their mouths early without full information are in a very precarious position and do great disservice to the ultimate cause of justice, he says. And he said, what I saw in this video, now he's talking about the shooting that occurred on Saturday. He said, what I saw in this video is, let's wait. But, it does appear in one video that a federal agent had a gun, we presume, although we don't know that it was Preddy's gun, was potentially disarmed before the shots were fired. And then that leaves a lot of important questions about why was he fired upon by other federal officers. So again, what he's saying is you got to take a wait and see attitude. And that's certainly, there are those, I think, for their own political reasons, they're trying to inflame folks. So they're doing everything they can to inflame what's going on. They want tension. They want those tensions inflamed. They want people getting into the face of federal law enforcement. And I think more reasonable people are saying, wait, okay, we don't know what happened. We've got to wait and see exactly what transpired. So let's wait. Let's see investigations. Let's let them play out before we just start arriving at, at conclusions that really may not be supported by any facts. And it's been pretty frustrating, I think, for many of us to watch those kinds of things unfold. There was one other piece I wanted to share with you this morning. Bill Maher saying the Democrats need to tell celebrities to shut the F up. He's saying that celebrities are not doing the party any favors. Bill Maher, who's a Democrat, very proud Democrat, also very much at odds with a lot of Democrats today. And he's talking about Hollywood. Hollywood is sort of the epicenter of the woke left. I don't think they're doing the Democratic Party any favors. I think if the Democrats want to win elections in the future, job one, tell the celebrities to just shut the F up. You're not helping. You don't strike people in most of the country as sensible or in touch with reality. See, now, when Bill Maher says these kinds of things, I think he's absolutely right. What is he talking about? People in most of the country on Main Street, right? I'm talking all the time about folks on Main Street and what's the view on Main Street. And Maher gets it, that kind of woke stuff just does not resonate with folks on Main Street. So, and then I don't want to get too much. This is a story at the New York Post, and a lot of this is, but he talked about Joe Rogan and the fact that Joe Rogan was excluded. He was not included. I think there was the Globe's decision, then they did not include Joe Rogan in a podcast category. Joe Rogan is the country's premier podcaster. How do you not include him in the category? But Rogan is somebody he's very much his own guy. There are times I listen to Joe Rogan and I totally agree with him. I think he's absolutely spot on. Other times I listen to him and I'm like, first of all, I not only don't agree with you, I'm not even sure I follow your reasoning as to how you're arriving at that point of view. So he's somebody I can agree with or disagree with, but I appreciate that, he's got an incredible following. He covers a lot of issues, I think, brings them to the forefront in American discussion like nobody else in the country. Joe Rogan does. How do you not include him when it comes to podcasters? That, to me, is mind-blowing. And Maher says the same thing. He said it was typical and predictable and also ridiculous that Joe Rogan wouldn't be nominated in a category that he dominated, or that he dominates. Totally agree. So it's an interesting story, these most recent comments from Bill Maher at you'll find those at the New York Post. Hey, I'm only a couple of people away. I'm like 2 people short of hitting 550 followers at YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're not a subscriber to the Greg Belfrage Show, please hit the subscribe button. So a number of you have been doing so. My thanks to those of you who joined last week. And I'm going to keep pleading. I'm going to keep pleading to help spread the word, help spread common sense, because God knows we don't need any more craziness. I mean, we don't need any more bizarro world antics. We've got our fill of that, I think. So help those of us who are really trying to. I know you and I are not going to agree on everything, but those of us who are at least making an honest effort to have honest discussion, please help by hitting the subscribe button on YouTube. Makes a big difference. All right, you have made it to the end of the video, so you are part of my gallery of champions. That's what I call you. Also, a special salute for the Bunker Brigade. That's the usual crew on YouTube that are here each and every day sharing their thoughts, and I appreciate all of you. So until tomorrow, my friend, I'm underground and gone.